Hey everybody, thanks for joining the broadcast. We're just going to wait another minute here just to give a couple people opportunity to join, and then we'll kick things off.
Can does our voices carry to this, or are they on mute? How does it work?
We do carry, and everyone else is on mute.
Okay, all right.
A couple more people logging in here. All right, let's get started. Clayton, can you see my screen?
Yep, looks good, Steve.
Okay, perfect. Once again, thanks everybody for joining the webinar today. Just a couple quick housekeeping items before we kick things off. So your audio, everyone is currently in listen only mode, so you are not able to unmute yourself, but there will be Q&A towards the end. If you do have questions during the session, please just type those into the questions panel on the right-hand side of the screen, and we will address as many of those as we can during the Q&A. If we do get short on time for any reasons, we'll make sure to get all those questions addressed and back to you. The session today is being recorded, so we will send out a copy as well as any other relevant information via email after the session, so you can just kind of listen and enjoy here. So on the call today is myself, Steve Todd, which I will give a proper introduction for shortly. I also have Clayton from our team, who's sort of working behind the scenes and working the webinar tools. He'll also help out with the Q&A. Then we have Bobby and RJ, who are our partners, as well as accessibility experts who will be introducing themselves at the relevant time as we kind of roll through here. So just a really quick introduction, or a quick overview rather, for the session today. I want to give a quick intro of our company, Polar Imaging. I know we do have a lot of our clients on the call today, but we also have a lot of non-clients. So welcome to all of you. I'll then kind of throw this over to Bobby and RJ. We'll talk about accessibility, why that matters, but then get into our accessibility on demand tool, which is, I'm sure, what everybody's interested in hearing and learning a little more about. So just quickly, our company, Polar Imaging, been around since 2001. We're located in London, Ontario. We've been known as a diverse organization that delivers a broad range of document management services over the years. If I look at our company and divide that up into four service areas, this is sort of our offering, is our BPO services, which is our business process outsourcing, which includes high volume document scanning, microfilm, mailroom services, workflow automation, AI driven document classification and extraction. So essentially we work with clients on small scanning projects, large scanning projects, so we can help take files from your file collection, digitize them using intelligent capture, index them, and then provide that information back to you in any format you want to see. That could be into an existing system, an enterprise content management system, or our own enterprise content management system, which is sort of the second service area. So we have enterprise content management services solutions that we help both on-premise as well as in the cloud to manage your information, setting up workflows and all of that stuff. We then have our equipment sales and service. And when I talk about equipment, that is primarily document scanners that go with the rest of our services and solutions, as well as microfilm equipment. We still do some microfilm equipment. So if you have microfilm collections, we do help out many clients in that regard. And then we kind of wrap all that up with our professional services. So making all of these things talk, doing integrations, implementations, and whatnot. So I am Steve Todd. I am the Chief Operating Officer with Polar Imaging. I've been with the company since 2003. So 22 years, spent over half my life in this industry. I oversee our operations for our sister company, PI Recovery, which does cloud backup and recovery services. I'm also an instructor for document management technology at Mohawk College, which I've done for over 15 years. I hold relevant certificates in this industry: enterprise content management, document capture, and then I'm a member of AIM and ARMA, so all my records managers out there, kind of shout outs. Also a member of a group called IMDA, and this is going to help segue in between introducing our partners on the call here. So just really quickly, this group is 25 similar companies around North America that sort of get together as a think tank, and it's an invite only group that's vetted, and like I said, we're basically a think tank. And this is where I met Bobby several years ago, and learned about his passion for accessibility and him recognizing sort of a gap in what's being offered and out there in the industry. So it's been very interesting to see this idea go from AOD, which we're about to sell you, go from idea to concept to here we are. And it was something that we had heard from our clients as well, as making documents accessible was a struggle. The tools out there were challenging, it was expensive, all of these things. So we're here to sort of bring this to everybody on the call, bring this to the market. And without further ado, I will pass this over to Bobby.
Welcome, everyone. And Steve, thank you for giving me the opportunity to at least describe what we do with AOD and what problem we're solving. And you guys will get obviously the most important thing is the demonstration of the application or the tool for addressing the issue. And just to segue a little bit from Steve, and I'll make this very short, really did start with the think tank in the group where we were looking at identifying where there was a gap in the marketplace. And since I had done when, as part of the service bureau work that we were doing, we're very technology centric. We built a ERM, electronic records management solution, mainly around sort of compliance with federal records. And so one of the gaps was as we continued to process, there was always this segment where we needed to make the documents accessible. So they were always manually done, and they tend to be what held up both from a budget standpoint and a time perspective, the ability to do that at some scale. And as the needs, the demands grew bigger and bigger, it became quite the bottleneck. And so with some dialogue with the group at IMDA, which is why Steve mentioned it, it's again a very sort of strategic think tank group with a couple of very large companies as well in it that also agreed with the challenge. So we, as a technology player within that space, set out to solve the problem. And it was started about 2 years ago, and ultimately, I'm the chief architect of the solution. So if there's any technical questions, by all means, please let me know. But we set out to solve the problem where we know that about 70% of the effort, because there's some really good tools that allow remediators that 30% to solve, which is material in the reduction in time and cost. But how do we get that to closer to 95% and sometimes 100%? And that's really an exercise in automation. So it took some really sort of sophisticated view to how you actually look at documents, and took experience in computer vision, data science, and then now with the advent of generative AI, it really sort of closed the loop and allowed success to happen. So I think, to the point we're achieving from a scoring perspective, well north of 95% before someone needs to actually do something, if they have to do it at all. And I think that's what when Robert, RJ, as we affectionately call him, will demonstrate. So hopefully that's just a backdrop of what we're going to do, and I'll hand it over to Robert.
Thanks, Bobby. Steve, would you be able to make me, I'm not sure presenter, but I just need access to be able to share my screen, it looks like. And while he's doing that, just, thank you for the introduction, and thank you everybody for joining. Got access, so let me share my screen. Let me know if you can see this. So I'm just going to briefly, just thumbs up, are you able to see my screen? Yeah, perfect. So just very quickly, I'm going to show you a couple of slides just to set the precedent in terms of the problem. I know that many on the call may already be accessibility professionals or experts and know many of these problems, but we found in our experience that many do not, and they really don't kind of understand all of the components and where everything kind of fits. So just felt that these slides may be useful. Just to start off as to why most PDFs are not accessible. This is straight from Adobe that in terms of this stat, 90% of all PDFs are not accessible at all. They are not compliant. So that equates into the trillions of PDFs at this point. There's a lot of reasons for that, but if you boil them down to the main ones, you can group them into 5. The first and main one really being that the majority of these documents are not actually digitally available. They're all scanned documents. So before anything, you need to make those scans available and readable. And that's where things like OCR and so on come into play. But then even if they are, it does not mean that they have accessibility tags. You have to tag in a very specific way in order to be compliant. And then you need to add things like descriptive alt text for every image, as well as fix any tables or forms, and apply all of the important metadata like document title, etc., in order to make a PDF compliant. Each one of these things, these problems, if you will, can trigger many hours of remediation, especially when you start to look at this at any type of scale. And what ultimately this kind of results into is a process that it's a bit different depending on the tool that you're using. And some of the best in class tools do, as Bobby mentioned, automate some of this process, right? But you'll see that it's usually around that 30 to 35%, where manual clicks are more of the main driver. And if you look at the steps, they all kind of boil down into, first, we need to make sure that the document itself, the text is available. If it's not available, you have to apply OCR. You then have to overlay that text back onto the document. That's the first big step. And there's an entire science around, if you do not have the technology to accurately extract the text from real world documents, meaning documents that are not high quality, none of the other steps I'm about to go over are going to matter. So step one is very, very important. Step two is where you're then applying the tags, the types of tags themselves, H1s, H2s, forms, and then you have to do a series of steps of now making sure they're in that right order. Every image has its corresponding alt text. All tables and forms are properly tagged and accessible. And then you're constantly playing a game of validating and making sure that your compliance score is going up. So each of these steps, if you kind of multiply them, they add up rather quickly, where just a 1,000-page document can take hundreds of hours for a single person. If you're just using the industry accepted estimates in terms of how long it takes to remediate a page, even with automation tools. So you'll just see that does not scale. This is a very slow process. 15 to 30 minutes a page is an industry average. Multiply that by just a standard million-page repository, and you're talking years in terms of remediation. And that's why it is so expensive per page. A lot of people are shocked when they hear that the average cost to remediate a page starts at $5. That's the absolute floor in many cases, and you're usually outsourcing it in that case. When you start to get to very complicated documents, scientific documents, where there's complex reporting, you can get to $10, $20, $40 a page for very, very complex forms. And it's just because it's so manual. And because of that, there's a level of inconsistency there that does not allow this to be a manageable problem. Like I said, there are trillions of PDFs that are just accepted from an Adobe perspective that the current paradigm, it is not able to be solved. You need automation in order to address this problem in any real way. And that's where, when we started to look at this in terms of, well, what is the current market look like, and where are we falling short? It was in a couple of key areas. The first and obvious one is that there was a clear automation gap. Manual clicks drove the workflow for the majority of tools. If you've ever used an accessibility or remediation tool, you know that you're not just able to start and use it. There is a process that you need to understand in order for you to use that tool. And that causes a bit of a gap in both reliability and usability. You need to have somebody trained on these tools in many cases in order to use them. Some of the newer ones are making more of an effort to make it as easy as possible, but if you've ever used a professional remediation tool, you will know that it takes a specialized resource to do that. So all of these things result into this shortfall where we have all of these documents that we need to remediate, but we're not able to really address this problem in any scalable way. it's something where these gaps can't be addressed in the current paradigm. And that's where we came from with accessibility on demand, or AOD, is to address each of these gaps and deliver a truly automated solution that can address these problems in a scalable way. And we like to think that accessibility on demand is the first truly automated PDF remediation platform that enables you to dramatically lower the cost for remediating your PDFs, enabling you to increase the scale of which how many PDFs you're able to remediate, and get a level of reliability with guarantees of compliance scores and auditable proof of what is being run. That is third-party verified. That is for a PAC checker. The same exact types of standards your customers would be using to determine if this is a accessible PDF. And all of this is in a intuitive workflow that, as you'll see in the demonstration I'm about to go over with you, anybody would be able to utilize this tool. You do not need to be an expert in order to utilize it. So I wanted to set that that context before I jump into the tool. Hopefully that makes sense. And I'm going to quickly just shift my screen to a document pulled up in Adobe. And this is because I don't know, again, if you're an accessibility expert, you already know all of this, but if you are not, you may not know, well, what does an inaccessible PDF, what does it look like really? And on the screen, you have a document that it's a common, what I like to call a real world document, where it's scanned. It's not always the best quality in terms of the actual scanning quality. You'll see that it's skewed. It has its issues. And on Adobe, if you have the Pro license, you're able to check if it has what's called accessibility tags. And it's right here in this little pan icon. As you see here, if there's no tags available, that means no reader is going to be able to interpret this to a document, to a user. This is a blind, this is an empty document as it relates to a user. So the process of now making this accessible, if I'm using Adobe, is I have to now first apply OCR, make sure that the text is extracted, and then I can apply tags. What I'm going to show you is how you're able to do all of this in AOD, and I'll do this in a batch format. So I'm going to share my screen one last time, this time with the sound, and let me know if you can see the application. Okay, perfect. So this is accessibility on demand, or the AOD application. What you'll notice from this grid view is that everything, all functionality you're about to see can be derived from this singular grid view. We process document and remediate documents in batches. So simplicity is at the core of this. So if I want to remediate a batch of documents, I'm going to click on Create Batch. I'm going to give it a name and a description. I can drop in or add in documents. So let me just add in a couple of docs that I have these are real docs that Steve, you had sent over prior, along with some other ones that I'm just going to include. So let's include these, and let's include a couple of these. Okay, so you'll see in this batch we have 5 files, and it'll sum up to us but a little over 300 pages. Once I click on Create Batch, it will now store these documents in this grid view, and you will see that a new line item will be added to this grid with that batch and all of the corresponding documents under them. If I want to quickly reference a document just to see what it looks like, I can click on this eye icon and it'll pull up the PDF preview where I can just quickly reference what is the actual document that's being shown. Now, once the batch is created, You can now do remediation at two different levels. I can remediate this entire batch at once, or I can remediate just individual documents. To do them, I'd follow the exact same steps. So I'm just going to select one of these documents, and in this drop down where you see upgrade to level, you'll see that there are currently two options, level 1 and level 2 in this environment. We actually have three levels of AOD. Level 1 is going to provide your foundational compliance and accessibility for any scanned or machine readable document of any type of document, whether it's an invoice, whether it's a complicated report, charts, or graphs. We're going to, on level 1, apply a searchable text layer, foundational accessibility tags, as well as standard alt text for every image, on top of document metadata, and everything to provide a foundational layer of compliance. What level 2 does is adds a layer of contextual alt text, where, and you'll see in this demonstration what that means, for every image embedded in the document, there will be detailed alternate text describing said image. This is very useful for documents that are very image or chart heavy, where you need to have a detailed description in order for you to understand said image. Like imagine a chart explaining the prices of oil over a 10-year period. You would need at least 1 to 2 good sentences in order for you to understand really what that chart means. That's where contextual alt text comes in. And level 2 provides a much more richer level of alt text that are very, very useful for chart or image heavy documents, as well as level 2 provides a guarantee of 95% or greater compliance score with WCAG 2.1 and PDF UA. These are the two global accessibility standards that apply to pretty much every federal standard of every major both enterprise as well as government organization. Whether that's in the United States, you have Section 508 at the federal level and Title 2 and 3. In Canada, you have AODA as well as the ACA, and in the EU and the UK, they have Sec 349, I believe. All of these standards, these rather federal standards, reference these two standards, WCAG and PDF UA. We partner with a third-party PAC checker for these scores. So these are the exact same. These scores are reflective of the exact same checks that they would do. And I will show you in a moment what that detailed assessment looks like.
Hey,
But
RJ, I was going to
yes,
just interject one thing on the level 2 because it's really important. One of the other factors on level 2 is very complex forms. That's the recommended approach, especially if it's an active form, and we're seeing that very heavily as a requirement in the public sector. So I just think it's important based on the audience.
yeah, no, absolutely, great point. So you're able to choose here at the document or batch level. For this case, I'm just going to make it simple. I'm going to select the entire batch. I'm going to select level 2, and then I'm going to just click on make accessible, and this will pull up my modal where I can review everything that I have selected. And if I generate, I can choose to generate my score or not, and then I can click on make accessible. Now this is going to start the engine. So as you'll see, each of these will go into a running status. And I'm going to continue with the demo as these process. You'll see that there was 256 pages that are being processed in that batch. We do process these documents utilizing a parallel architecture. So you're able to process very, very large batches and files that traditional tools usually limit. If you've ever used traditional remediation tools, usually limit your file uploads to something like 10 megabytes per file, whereas we've ran over PDFs that are over a gigabyte in size, as well as we've ran batches with thousands and thousands of pages in a single batch. You will know that the document is finished processing when the status changes, of course, to this green icon saying completed, as well that the score populates here on the right-hand side. So you'll see for each of them that they are color-coded. If they are above 95%, they will be color-coded in green. If they are under 95%, it'll be color-coded in red. If you hover over any of them, you'll be able to see at a quick glance the number of checks and passes, warnings, and fails per each standard that were applied for the documents. But then you're also able to dive deeper into any of these documents. So if I click on this percentage for WCAG, you'll see it scored 97.72%. If I click on this, it will pull up the compliance modal, where for each of these standards, you will see that I will have their score as well as the total number of checks that were done across that document. So you see that there was 26 pages in this document, and there were 2,021 tags that were applied, and there were 17,999 checks that were passed, 94 that were warnings, and 422 failed. You're able to see what these break down into per each standard. So WCAG follows what's called the POUR methodology. So that stands for perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. Within each of these, you'll see a high-level breakdown of each of the subcategories and how it passed, or there was warnings or failures. And again, these apply to both of these, both standards. Now, if I want to review, let's say, okay, I see here that there are 207 checks that they said that failed. Naturally, one of your first instincts is to, okay, well, what do I need to do to fix this? Well, why did something fail? This is where the review modal it comes into play. We wanted to provide a mechanism within AOD where all of the accessibility is automated, and you're able to get to this state from a completely automated fashion. But if you wanted to review what the engine did, as well as you wanted to make any edits yourself, we wanted to enable that within the tool and make that as seamless and easy as possible. So there's two ways in which you can get to the review modal. First is directly within this compliance modal. I can go right here to open and review, and this will pull up the document in the review modal in order for us to review it. Or I'm able to select any of the documents or batches that have been completed, and I can click on this review button here. What this does is just allows you to review all of the documents that you select across all of the batches, just making it much simpler in order for you to be able to review and remediate. Now, when the review modal is popped up, what you'll see is that it's broken up into three sections. On the left-hand side, you have the accessibility, the tag tree that this was what was applied by the engine. So this document had 26 pages. You'll see here that all of these 26 pages you'll be able to navigate to and then expand. So if I expand on page 1, you'll see the accessibility tags that were applied for this first page. So for this one that says H1 or figure, I will then see on the middle panel where it corresponds to on the document. So it'll highlight in red what region of the document this particular tag has been placed. The middle panel also has at the top here the document title as well as the document language. These will be inherited if they're already set on the document. But if they are not, then the engine will create them and standardize them automatically. We make sure that if you already have existing metadata in your PDF, we don't just blow it away. We are only applying or changing what is necessary for us to run our engine. So things like document metadata, we can preserve if it's already existing in the document. And the same thing with bookmarks. It's not currently in this version that you see here, but your bookmarks as well. Any document that has over 15 pages is supposed to have bookmarks to be compliant. So if you have bookmarks already on your document, we will preserve those. If not, then we will be applying them automatically for any documents over 15 pages, and you'd be able to review them in here. Just to go over the final pieces of the review modal, you'll see on the right-hand side, you have this properties and checker panel. So for any tag that I click on in the tag tree, you'll see that its corresponding properties get populated. And this document we ran on level 2. So you'll see that for a figure tag, figures have alt text. You'll see here that for this particular image, this is the alt text that was applied for that particular image. And this applies for every figure where there is an embedded image on the document. So for this particular icon. And where this really becomes useful is in documents that have very, very complex charts. And a feature that we've added into this is also the screen reader functionality. Ultimately, what you're tagging these documents for are so users that have difficulty in interacting with these documents are they're able to interact with them. They do that through screen readers. So it's very important for you to hear what does a screen reader sound like when they're reading and interpreting this particular tag or this particular image. So if you see here on the properties panel, if you see this icon that is here, if I click on this, you should hear what a real screen reader, what it'll sound like when it's interpreting this particular tag.
Icon of a stylized tree with a dark green trunk and branches, featuring symmetrical, oval-shaped leaves arranged in a circular pattern, set against.
So that's what a real screener. That's not JAWS. JAWS is pretty much the industry standard, but that is what it would sound like to hear that be interpreted. Steve, were you gonna have any questions? Oh no. Okay.
So just confirming that you could hear that.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. So we wanted to showcase the screen. We wanted to rather input the screen reader functionality directly into here, because too often what will happen is we found you could remediate the document in your application, but you don't really find out something's wrong until you go and test it in some application using a reader. So we wanted to build this into the application to make it as seamless as possible. The next thing that I also just want to highlight is that any text that is applied to any tag can also be edited. So this applies for tags like H1, P tags, forms, notes, links, etc., where in this text panel, you're able to update this text and save that back into the document. Now, this is very useful for when you have very, very low quality scan documents where in terms of extraction, you'll see our platform is really kind of state of the art as it relates to working on low quality documents, but you may have instances where you want to adjust what is the extracted text. You can easily do so through here and just save that any changes that are made. The last thing that I want to go over in the review modal is the checker. Actually, it's not. This is the second to last. So the checker is a continuation of the review modal, where for each of those standards, WCAG and PDFUA, you can then further break down into each category what it identified as being an error. So you'll see that it goes quite extensively down each of the subcategories within each representative standard. So for WCAG, it counted 516 things that were warnings or failures, 242 of which were under distinguishable, As you break down distinguishable, you'll see that contrast, the minimum contrast is one of them. And in the contrast of text, you'll see all of these particular areas. If I click on any of them, you'll see that it will go to the corresponding part of the document where these errors are found. Word of caution, though, is that on some of these, remember that the validation of this is programmatic, and this is a third-party programmatic vendor that is doing this, that some of these issues will not be fixable without changing the underlying document. So just something to think about, that there are some documents where you're not able to even read them to 100% in terms of the overall extraction and quality of it. Those types of documents are you're not going to be able to fix everything on those said documents, but we showcase to you everything that can be identified or fixed. The last thing that I want to go over is the add tag and add element functionality, where in the tag tree, all of these tags you're able to adjust their particular reading order and hierarchy, depending on how you want the document to be interpreted. But what you're also able to do is add tags or elements. So for this page, let's just say it did not get the image here in the middle. It did not tag that correctly. If I go on the page and I right click and I click on add element, you'll see that it prompts me to drag over a page on the document. So I'm just going to drag over that particular section. You'll see it identifies.
RJ, I was going to say maybe a good example is, so it did tag that normally, but what if you wanted the subsection, right? So you see the small left box of just the buildings. What if you just wanted that to be isolated? I think that's a better example of adding a tag that wasn't existing, right?
Sure. Yeah. Let's do
Just
that.
an idea.
So let me go here over the left-hand side. So if that's selected region, you'll see that pops up there, and you can determine what is the particular tag type. So for this, I'm going to choose figure. And you'll see here that I can be prompted to manually put in whatever my alt text is, or you can click on this star icon here. And what it'll do is extract either the text or generate the alternate text for a particular image. So you'll see here that it applied this alt text for figures. So if I like this, I can go ahead and save it, and it'll now add that figure tag here. If I was to do this, let's say around like let's say blog big text.
And what you saw was the last thing where RJ moved the tag. So you have the ability to add, delete, and then move. So it gives you sort of the full capability of adjusting the reading order. But you do it all in this single modal, which is part of the design goal.
Right. And this obviously wouldn't be tagged as this, but just to kind of showcase to you, where it really becomes useful is when you need to extract a large amount of text as well and classify them under, singular tags. It just helps in making the overall remediation process a bit more seamless than if you're used to you doing this process in, let's say, in Adobe. So this is the review modal, where, again, all of these changes that I made can now be saved. Well, I probably don't want to save those changes just because I did not tag that correctly. But now you'll see that the documents that we ran, that we started when we started this demo, have now completed. So you'll see that one of these documents that were here, I did this one purposely. It's one that does not pass for WCAG. If you see this particular document, if I want to go here in the review modal, A second while this loads. Just see here, maybe I just do Well, while that loads in there, let me just download these particular documents just to kind of showcase to you the final state of these back in Adobe. So let me just download these documents once you have any of these selected. So I'm just going to allow, and let me just pull this back up.
RJ, I want to just reinforce something because I think it's important on why we did what we did. Can you pull back up the remote view modal on any document? Doesn't matter which one. I just want to talk about, really sort of purposefully what we did, and just, comparative to, sort of the way the sort of the current methods are. So, I mean, most of you, I think a lot of you that I think probably joined have experience with all of this and trying to remediate documents. And, in the end, I think hopefully you saw really the simplicity of this. There are other tools that do a lot of other things, and that's a good thing because its goal is to give power to a remediator really to accomplish a set of different things to improve their time to complete the job. Why you don't see a lot of things in here, you just see exactly what you need to complete the job because the goal of our solution was to address 95%, or sometimes, as I said before, more of it. And you're left with the things that you may want to change or may want to do, but you're able to do it very, very quickly. So you look at the left-hand side. So typically it's a a reading order issue or you've missed a tag or something like that. And how quickly can you do that is the goal, right? How quickly can you accomplish that function? And that's really what RJ was showing from add, delete, or move. And that's what that left-hand side did. And then the right-hand side was, okay, we have a tag. Is there something that needs to be modified in that tag? Really the context of the tag. Or how do we add additional text? And where is the performance improvement is you could type it in yourself if you honestly feel like, you know exactly what you want in there. Or we give you that ability to just press a button and kind of remove that thought process so you can do it quickly. And that really, really manifests itself when we have very complicated images. And as we talked about charts, graphs, very complex images, that if we don't do it, although it's compliant by having a simple description, it doesn't serve the ultimate goal or the mission of making sure the vision impaired can actually understand the document. So everything we did in this review modal is really if for some reason our automation didn't finish, you have the ability right here very quickly without having to go outsource and send the document out. You have people internally that don't need a lot of extra training around all the complexity of PDF remediation can do it in a very simple way. So I just wanted to leave you with that message and why we did what we did. And sometimes looking as there's a lot of things that I would have done in another tool or another tool, but you shouldn't have to do that here. It's really just to get you to finish the job and finish the life cycle of that ultimate goal, which is a highly accurate remediated PDF with the least amount of time, least amount of cost.
Yeah.
So just back to you, RJ. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to tie it back in is that this is that document that you'll see we added that that figure tag here just on that left hand side, and this is what it looks like when you pull it back up in Adobe with the different tags applied across the different pages. So let me just pause here. We have 15 minutes. I think that was kind of we wanted to leave the last 10 to 15, as it relates to questions. But in terms of the functionality of accessibility and AOD, what you've been seeing here, this is the self-service portal where, as you'll see, that the credits, all of this, would be integrated into here. But also everything that you have just seen can be integrated within your document management workflows and systems. So let me pause here. Hopefully that was informational and you found that valuable, and open any questions. I'll pass it back to you, Steve.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Clayton. Yeah, I know there's some questions that are coming in. If you do have questions, please feel free to type those into the question box here. The one thing that I did want to maybe draw attention to, and I know it's one sort of feature that our clients and people we've been showing this to has been very impressed about, is that level of detail in the alt text in some of those images. We've heard from some clients who have been outsourcing this information that the documents are accessible, but those alt tags aren't there. I think RJ, you could probably comment further on this, but I mean, as far as the document being compliant with some of those images, it doesn't require that level of detail. And it's more, what is impressive to me is sort of the user experience when you're viewing that document to be able to understand those images in the detail that we're providing out of the solution here.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the areas where if you've been a part of PDF remediation before, you'll know that technically, to be compliant for an image, it just has to have some type of alt text. And oftentimes what people will do is just put the word image for a figure. And technically that can be seen as some form of compliance. But as Bobby mentioned, it's not very valuable to the user. So this is where generative AI is quite useful in being able to take in the context of that image in relation to the page and the document and just provide that level of clarity that just, if you try to do it manually, it would compound on top of everything else we just discussed. So it's definitely a differentiator in that it just can't really be done that way manually.
Here's another question, RJ. Do the compliance reports automatically come with the output?
Yes, they do. So everything that is processed, sorry, I did not show that functionality in here. That everything that is processed, you can export a compliance report to. So that compliance report will showcase for every file, very similar to what you saw in that compliance modal, just a bit more detailed, showcasing all of the checks. So you'll be able to have kind of that auditable proof per each document, as well as some metadata of, on the dashboard level, how many documents have been processed and so on. But yes, for every document, you'll have those reports.
Perfect. Another question is, how do I get started if I want to use this service? Where do I start? I might be able to kind of field that one. The great thing with this AOD is it truly is on demand. And when we're giving these sort of demonstrations and having these conversations, we usually get, what am I missing here? What do we need to sign up for or whatnot? And it's truly on demand. So you can start today. There's two ways that we allow you to, I guess, process these documents. And some clients prefer to just send us documents to our team, and our team will run those through the AOD and provide that back to you. So we do the heavy lifting, or we give you access to that platform. And this works the way that it's kind of priced out, and we can provide this information to everybody that's on the webinar today. Is it's based off of credits. So you buy a certain amount of credits, and you can start processing documents. That could be a single document, that could be hundreds of thousands of documents. So it's very easy to use, and you use it truly on demand as needed. Clayton, was there any other questions?
Yeah, the other thing we've been getting quite a few questions on about is the data security. So I don't know if you just want to kind of talk a little bit about that. I think in specific, the question was, our documents are sensitive. How secure is AOD?
Bobby, you want to take it or you want me?
Go for it, RJ. You're good.
Yeah. So as it relates to the data security issue, because that's one we hear a lot, especially with our governmental customers. So there's going to be levels that we can really provide. For some customers, they want an entirely secure and private solution and instance. That's basically the highest level, I guess you could say, in terms of configuration that we can accommodate, is where we can truly make this a private instance. However, in terms of the state of the art, we do have some resources that do require cloud resources in order for us to operate. So in terms of like the levels, we can go all the way to private. And we have some customers where we've had to do that. However, because in terms of like the best performance, is by utilizing some cloud resources. We do have things like AWS GovCloud and so on, where we can still leverage those assets whilst providing that layer of governmental security. And then of course for standards where that we're just trying to make these documents accessible. One of our partners that was speaking with the state government came back with just a very good response that if these are documents that are being made accessible for the public, oftentimes those documents aren't going to have PII or the type of information where you would need to worry about data security, because it needs to end up being accessible or available to the public anyways. Doesn't always work like that, but we're able to accommodate those different layers because every customer kind of has their own unique preferences in terms of security. So for the utmost, we could do this completely private. But in terms of ideal, utilizing something like AWS GovCloud for governmental clients or something like that would be an alternative as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to. I mean, I think RJ said it. I mean, we obviously do work for the sort of the federal sector and the public, the state and local now, and commercially as well. But the GovCloud region, because we grew up there, doing a lot of federal work in our ERM solution. So that's what we sort of start there, unless, and then we, like in Canada, the region is we use the AWS region in Canada. So that's where we host the application. We do ask the question if there's something specific, so when you say sensitive documents, we just need to understand what that means, because as we all know, there's different levels of that. And to the final, as RJ said, it sort of completes with on-prem, which is a version that is possible to do on-prem. It's a bit of more work to do that, but it's designed to do that. So it really comes down to what the requirement is. And so when we talk about on-prem, typically the need is quite extensive, meaning they're doing, like, without naming the organization, they're processing about 8 million pages every year through their system, and they need it to be on-prem, right? And not everything they do, because they are using it in the GovCloud region as well, for especially everything that's publicly facing or going up to their website, because there's lots of documents that ultimately reach there. But then there's a big subset that ultimately they stay internal and they're sensitive. So the solution is going to be in that scenario, really dictated by the agency. There is also, the agency might, if, the question I always ask is, do you also standardize? You have your own hybrid clouds that are, belong to the agency. That's the easiest solution to deploy, because we're already in that architecture. So that's one other option, because you have your own secure environment there. So that's one opportunity. And then of course there's the completely off cloud version that just takes time to set up, because of obviously we have to understand sort of your infrastructure capabilities relative to our architecture. So I know I'm going a little more technical, but sort of all the above can be done. It really comes down to the requirement.
Yeah, thanks, Bobby. We have about 6 minutes. We have a lot of questions. We'll get through just a few more quickly here, and then we'll kind of wind this down. But some of this are around pricing questions. Will you send out pricing for the options? Yes, we absolutely will do that. And the other is, are credits used on a per page basis? And yes, they are. So you buy credits and it's based off the pages that you are processing. And then kind of the final one here we'll take, and RJ, I don't know if you want to address this one, but it's just, what's the turnaround time to have a document completed? Yeah, I'm muted there, RJ.
Gosh, just playing that game of mute and unmute. Sorry about that. So as it relates to that, obviously you'll see I'm excited to answer that one, and that the name on demand is meant that way for a reason, where the turnaround time should be measured in seconds for the remediation. Just to give you some real world benchmarks that we have seen just of these batches that we have run in the past couple of weeks. We ran 18,000 pages in a single batch, that particular batch took about 35 minutes to process. Obviously, it'll be dependent on the way that the architecture is set up is in parallel. So whatever is the longest document in that batch, that is the amount of time that it will take for all of the other documents in that batch to complete. So in that particular batch I just discussed with you, the longest document I think was about like 1,100 pages or something like that. So, that was the amount of time that it would take to then process that particular document. We expect this number to continue to get, more optimized over time as we find opportunities, but these are measured in seconds, and seconds for even hundreds or thousands of pages. 60 to 120 seconds is pretty much what you're going to be your baseline is. And then when you get into the hundreds or thousands of pages, a couple of minutes.
Yeah, I'm going to caution there. I mean, it's fast. I mean, even what he just said, even if it was multiple times that, it's still fast. But there are variables like if you have a very large batch, and in that very large batch are very large files. And the reason being is that, and I'm getting technical, but just to understand it, is that whenever there are so many limitations around large file processing. So we have a lot of pre-processing on large files, so that before it actually goes into the accessibility phase of it, there's a lot of pre-processing. So that adds overhead when you have scenarios like that, large files, large batches. When you have sort of standardized batches, say you have something, documents under 100 pages, then it tends to be a lot more streamlined to do that. But as RJ mentioned, everything's parallel process, we call in the technical world, where it's a lot of multi-threading. And so ultimately, sometimes that multi-threading, depending on the size of the file, is done at the file level. And sometimes the multi-threading is even broken down at the page level. So the more you multi-thread and the more you break up, the more the overhead happens. So there's always a trade-off there. So when RJ mentioned optimization, we're tracking all of that. So our goal is always to get it faster and faster. But just what you saw today when you uploaded that files, and this isn't actually the most optimal way we're doing it, because in this, what we call sandbox demo environment, it doesn't have all the bells and whistles for optimization, but that was 5 minutes is what we ran those documents. So it's not bad. It's actually pretty good. And if you compare it to what would normally happen in a manually generated process, well, you can do the math, right? It's just sort of night and day. So I'm giving a little bit of a long-winded answer to it, but just it was a good question. Just wanted to understand it, even sort of how we do it architecturally.
Well, thanks, Bobby. And then just kind of quick follow-up question on that was if I send a document to Polar Imaging, can I have that back the next day? Answer is yes. And that's kind of a good segue to kind of wrap up here. If you do have documents, you want to see what they look like, we're happy to run them through and run samples for you. So by all means, please reach out to our team to do so. And with that, I want to thank Bobby, I want to thank RJ, I want to thank Clayton, and I want to thank all of you for spending some time. We've had a lot of interest in this, and that's indicative of how many people have signed up for this webinar and what we're hearing about it. Something I mentioned, I've been in the industry a long time, and I can't think of something that we've kind of brought out that has generated this much interest. So thank you very much. We appreciate the time and hope everyone has a great day.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.